Ravenbrook was a quaint, sleepy town nestled amidst rolling hills and vibrant autumn foliage. Life here flowed at a gentle pace, unmarred by the chaos or clamor of the outside world. The town's charm lay in its predictability, where the sun rose and set over the same streets, casting its warm glow on familiar faces. People knew their neighbors by name and shared a sense of community that was both comforting and mundane. The rhythm of life in Ravenbrook was undisturbed until one fateful day when everything changed. It was an ordinary morning, the kind that bled seamlessly into the countless others in Ravenbrook. Children skipped to school, their laughter echoing in the empty streets. Commuters made their way to the city center, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the calm. Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman who lived on Elm Street, had found something she couldn't believe. Etched into the side of her antique oak table was a number, 7. At first, she assumed it was some sort of prank. But when she turned to call her husband, she saw another number, 14, scrawled onto her wall. Fear started to creep up her spine. This wasn't a prank. This was something sinister. As the day wore on, more numbers appeared across the town. 28 spray-painted onto the basketball court, 56 carved into the wooden benches in the park, and finally, 112 daubed on the grand old doors of the First Baptist Church. The townspeople were baffled. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispers of an escaped convict or a deranged cult member loose in their midst. But by nightfall, there was still no culprit, no explanation. Only 7 numbers daubed across their town, taunting them with their silence. By that night, as the last rays of daylight faded away, the quiet town of Ravenbrook had transformed into a hub of fear and uncertainty. The 7 numbers loomed over the town like ominous specters, each stroke a stark reminder of the unknown. As if the chilling appearance of the numbers hadn't been enough, a new development sent shockwaves through the community. The next morning, a local resident spotted another number, 224, scrawled on the side of the old water tower overlooking the town. The number hung heavy in the air, amplifying the unease that had settled over Ravenbrook. In the face of this baffling mystery, the townspeople were a mix of confused and frightened. Their once close-knit community was now fractured by fear, making this charming town feel less like a haven and more like a prison. Everyone was a suspect, everyone a potential victim, and the absence of any logical explanation only added fuel to the fire. Amidst this maelstrom of confusion and fear sat Ethan Miller, a young 21-year-old math student at Ravenbrook University. While the rest of the town wrestled with their mounting fears, Ethan saw the numbers differently. For him, they were a puzzle, a mathematical enigma that demanded his attention. He scribbled the sequence 7, 14, 28, 56, 112, 224 into his notebook, trying to decipher the logic behind it. Back in his dorm room, Ethan was deep in thought. He traced the numbers on his notepad, trying to find a pattern. Then it hit him. It's simple. Each number is double the previous one. The missing one must be 448. With this realization came a surge of confidence, a feeling of superiority as he believed he had solved the mystery that had the entire town on edge. But his moment of triumph was short-lived. The next morning, as Ethan stepped out of his dorm, he saw it splashed across his front door in dripping black ink. The number 448. It was as if someone had anticipated his solution and mocked his triumph. Suddenly, the numbers didn't seem like a game anymore. They were a threat, a countdown, and he was the target. That's when the chilling realization hit him. The numbers weren't just a puzzle. They were a countdown. And 448 wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Now, the question wasn't about the numbers themselves. It was about what they signified, what they concealed. What was the ultimate purpose of this terrifying game? As days turned into nights, Ethan's mind raced, trying to predict the next move. He was trapped in a labyrinth of numbers, each tick-tock of the clock echoing the urgency of his situation. His world was shrinking, defined by the looming threat represented by the cryptic countdown. Determined to understand the sequence, Ethan turned to technology. Hours turned into days as he and Laura combed through data, searching for patterns or connections. Just as their hope began to dwindle, Laura's computer flashed a result. Laura, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and excitement, pointed to the screen. Each number corresponded to the exact intervals between significant historical events related to Ravenbrook. The founding of the town, the opening of the Ravenbrook Institute, the ratification of the town charter. Each date marked by a gap of years numerically equivalent to the sequence. But this revelation brought with it a chilling implication. If the sequence continued, then the next date would be November, exactly 1 week from that day. And the next number in the sequence was 56. What did it mean? What would happen on November? As the realization dawned on him, a chill snaked down his spine. The numbers weren't just a historical reference. They were a prediction, a grim foreshadowing of an event that would forever change Ravenbrook. Determined to unravel the mystery, Ethan turned to the town's most learned member, Professor Alder, a retired mathematician who was known for his eccentricities. The professor listened intently to Ethan's theory, his gaze fixed on the worn copy of Euclid's Elements in his hand. Finally, he looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and concern. Professor Alder spoke in a low voice, his words carefully measured. Yes, the numbers are a historical sequence, but they are also a harbinger of fate. 50 years ago, a similar sequence appeared, marking the disappearance of 7 students from Ravenbrook Institute. They were never found, leaving behind nothing but questions and this chilling sequence. Ethan, shaken by the professor's words, could only nod, absorbing the weight of this revelation. So the numbers were not just a historical record. They were a repeating cycle, a haunting echo of a mystery that had remained unsolved for decades. Days turned into a blur as the countdown reached its final stages. The atmosphere in Ravenbrook thickened with tension and dread. The townspeople, initially skeptical of Ethan's warnings, now shared his fear. The playful curiosity had morphed into a chilling premonition of an impending disaster. On the eve of the final day, as the clock ticked relentlessly towards midnight, Ethan received a mysterious phone call. The caller, who identified himself as Detective Harris from the Ravenbrook police, confirmed what Ethan had suspected. The numbers were not merely a historical sequence. They were a chilling prophecy that had tragically come true in the past and was threatening to repeat itself again. Just as the last vestiges of daylight faded, leaving Ravenbrook in an eerie darkness, Ethan and Detective Harris met. The detective, his face etched with worry, handed Ethan a worn file. Inside were the details of the vanishing 7. 7 students who had disappeared exactly 50 years prior, their vanishing mirrored by the same sequence of numbers. With the weight of history pressing down on him, Ethan saw that he was not just dealing with a cryptic puzzle. He was part of a recurring nightmare that had ensnared Ravenbrook every 50 years. As the clock struck midnight, the final hour of the countdown, Ethan understood that he was running out of time. The mystery of the 7 numbers was not just about understanding a sequence. It was about preventing a tragedy. He had to find the 7th number, not for his own sake, but for the sake of those who might be at risk. Suddenly, a loud banging on his door startled him. With trembling hands, he opened the door to find a black envelope sealed with wax. Inside the envelope was a card bearing a single word: "Congratulations, you solved stage 1. Tomorrow, stage 2 begins." Beneath the message was a name: Marcus Cole. Who was Marcus Cole, and what did it mean for stage 2? As dawn broke, casting its soft light on the town of Ravenbrook, Ethan's worst fears were confirmed. Marcus Cole, the name scrawled on the card, belonged to a young man who had vanished 50 years ago, one of the 7 whose disappearance remained a haunting mystery. The game of numbers was not just a historical echo. It was a terrifying reality that was repeating itself, threatening to engulf Ravenbrook once again. The countdown had ended, but a new and more perilous chapter was just beginning. What new challenges awaited Ethan, and how would he prevent the tragic fate that had befallen Marcus and the other students 50 years before? The mystery of the 7 numbers deepened, pulling Ethan into a vortex of danger and intrigue. His journey was far from over, and the stakes had just been raised. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story.